Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Here's Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. Trinidad and Tobago's borders to reopen. This story takes the lead in our 972nd edition of Caribbean Perspective for Tuesday, 27th October 2020. Details after this important message.
The hurricane season is now upon us, so we as Caribbean people need to remember to think safety and be prepared. Avoid venturing outside during a storm or hurricane, especially if there are strong winds. Rooftops and other debris are often blown about and can cause great damage.
Welcome back. Trinidad and Tobago's borders restrictions remain, but a committee is being assembled to recommend the best way forward in removing the travel exemption system that controls the repatriation of Trinidad and Tobago nationals. TV6's Elizabeth Williams has more in this announcement by Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley.
I am putting together a small committee of the Minister of National Security, the Minister of Health, and the Attorney General tomorrow. And that committee's work is to try to get us to remove the exemption system and to allow persons to come home as flights are available.
Dr. Rowley promised that by November 2nd, something more definite will be revealed to the country on the removal of the exemption system for nationals abroad.
It is my hope that by the 2nd of November, we would be, which is just over a week from now, we should be able to very definitively put something in place and report to you with respect to this particular matter.
Prime Minister Rowley said he was satisfied that a tagging system could be used to successfully monitor nationals who come into the country and need to be quarantined.
The quarantine system would still be required. And depending from where persons come, whether it's from the low risk, the medium risk, or the high risk, the CMO could determine what kind of quarantine they would be required.
He also said he has been in talks with our Caribbean neighbors on intra-regional travel.
I spoke with the President of Guyana a few days ago at length, and we believe that we could begin to have more movement between our citizens and the Guyanese population, the Grenada population, the Barbados population, because the level at which they're at is either lower than or equal to us.
Elizabeth Williams, TV6 News.
Meantime, the Prime Minister says he's proud he has inspired 6-year-old Jakin Edwards. Dr. Rowley made the comment on Saturday during the Ministry of Health media conference in Tobago. This follows last week Friday's story of the 6-year-old farmer on TV6 News. More from Elizabeth Williams again.
But what that little boy's exercise would have done is to indicate to particularly his young colleagues that agriculture is interesting, it's enjoyable, and he did mention about actually selling his produce, meaning that it can be lucrative and if you do it as a career.
Dr. Rowley said millions have been set aside for the agriculture sector, inclusive of the provisions for access roads and the availability of lands for farmers.
There's a $500 million allocation in the Ministry of Finance to fund certain agricultural initiatives.
Dr. Rowley said the cabinet discussed the issue of making agriculture more attractive.
Only last week, last cabinet meeting, we took a decision, 2 decisions were taken to create some centralized focusing of the agricultural extension programs in the ministry and in the country as a whole, bringing them together. And you will see those kinds of things aiming to make agriculture more attractive.
The Prime Minister said more farmers are needed.
And the technology and the science that young Jaden point to are the new things that we expect to happen in agriculture in growing vegetables and raising livestock, and in just generally producing more food so that we get better security.
Elizabeth Williams, TV6 News.
Over in Antigua, the Prime Minister there, Gaston Brown, has joined his regional colleagues for the 97th meeting of the Monetary Council of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, the ECCB. A communique issued following the meeting detailed the severe strain that COVID-19 has placed regional economies under, but also forecast a slight turnaround. More in this ABS report with Andy Liebert.
The meeting of the Monetary Council took place virtually, and the major agenda matter was the state of affairs of the regional economy in the face of COVID-19. The report of the governor of the ECCB on monetary and credit conditions within the currency union was presented. Regional leaders were told that the COVID-19 pandemic has had extremely damaging impact on the ECCB member countries through disruptions in the travel and tourism sector and foreign direct investment. In September, the report noted that the ECCB revised its growth projection for the ECCU to a decline of 16.2% in 2020. The positive news is that a rebound of 5.1% is estimated next year. But it notes this will depend on the continued resilience of health systems, the effectiveness of reopening protocols for virus containment, the availability of and access to a vaccine for COVID-19, and fiscal and financial support for the economies. Meantime, the Monetary Council received the Financial Stability Report for the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union up to September this year. It states that the financial system in the region remains stable during the first 9 months of 2020, but noted vulnerabilities exist, including an elevated level of non-performing loans, which is likely to increase following the expiration of the COVID-19 loan repayment deferral program. Andy Liebert, reporting for ABS News.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick.
Moving further south to Guyana, HGP's Wendell Badri reports on the case management hearing of the election petitions brought before the court by the APNU-AFC coalition.
The learned Chief Justice, Madam Roxanne George, acting on Thursday, presided over the case management hearing for the election petitions brought to the court by the APNU-AFC coalition party, where 8 respondents were named in addition to the applicants who filed the petitions. During deliberations, the attorney who filed the first petition, 88 of 2020, Royce Dilford, Senior Counsel, along with his legal team, which is headed by Attorney-at-Law Rex McCrae, Senior Counsel, stated that the petition speaks to declarations made by the Ghana Election Commission and its chair, and further deems those declarations to be unconstitutional and without statutory basis. He also alluded to attaching several documents to the petition, which will serve as evidence in this regard. Attorney-at-Law Mayor Robertson also posited that the second petition, 99 of 2020, speaks to irregularities allegedly perpetrated at or during the course of the 2020 elections, such as voter impersonation, missing statutory documents, among others. The attorney mentioned that the election body did not meet its requirement to hold free, fair, and credible elections, and therefore the entire process should be vitiated. He also alluded to having witnesses to support these claims, while at the time was unable to say exactly how many witnesses will be appearing during the trial. Justice George at that moment informed that he should have had all his ducks in place by now with regards to the number of witnesses his team will be calling on to present evidence before the court. He nevertheless allowed him to submit the requisite information at a later date, while also reminding him that cross-examination of witnesses will be allowed. He also admonished the applicants as well as respondents to ensure that they have all their information properly aligned so as to ensure a smooth flow to the proceedings. Senior Counsel Douglas Mendez, meanwhile, inferred that the petitions should be deemed null and void since the proper line of service wasn't followed as it relates to serving his client, Bharat Jagdeo. The attorney pointed out that Mr. Jagdeo was expected to be served notice of the petitions by registered post. However, this action did not materialize, hence the request to deem the petitions a nullity. The Chief Justice respectfully declined this proposal. Senior Counsel Royce Dilford asked for the petitions not to be commingled since they represent different issues and speak to different aspects of the 2020 elections, which the Chief Justice granted. Further applications in relation to the hearing of the petitions are expected to be filed on or before November 20, while the trial date for the petitions has been set for November 24th, 2020. Wendell Badri reporting for the HGB Nightly News.
Over in St. Lucia, Hilaire schools Prime Minister's handling of current crisis. Solange Alfred of HTS News Force reports.
The social media hashtag #BestCMOEver, along with the tagline, quote, "I stand with Sharon Belmar George," unquote, has drawn the ire of some, in particular, SLP spokesperson for Investment, Tourism and the CIP, Dr. Ernest Hilaire. Dr. Hilaire believes it's an influence campaign by the current administration to capitalize on the goodwill enjoyed by the senior public servant. A no-no, argues the opposition lawmaker, especially at the height of the ongoing pandemic. The recognition of the CMO's stellar work comes amid a barrage of fake news and a rise in COVID-19 cases.
For the Prime Minister to come out and rather than clear up this issue, as a leader should, and give the public assurances that the CMO is in fact in the right field, and even ask her to address some of the concerns of the public. Instead, he seeks to politicize it, that he is standing with the CMO and she's the best CMO ever. I stand with the CMO, I support the CMO, I want to give her strength to do the work that she's doing. But then at the same time, I will say to her, people are asking some legitimate questions, and can you address them? That's not being abusive. And I think the Prime Minister, what he did was wrong in attempting to single out the CMO and make it look like St. Lucians or some St. Lucians are opposed to her and they don't support her.
The chief medical officer has undoubtedly carried a heavy load from the onset of the pandemic and with the current wave of COVID-19 cases. The Ministry of Health is undertaking a massive contact tracing effort to mitigate a community spread of the virus. Dr. Hilaire, who is disturbed by what he views as politicizing a solemn office of the state, delivers a scathing assessment of the current Minister of Finance.
So if the CMO is the best CMO ever because she's handling the health aspect well, then you're the worst Prime Minister, and the worst Minister of Finance ever. And I believe there are too many people struggling and suffering in this country, and we're not hearing from the government. The Prime Minister is avoiding dealing with those core issues and accounting to the people of St. Lucia how much money is being borrowed in this country and what is it being spent on. Too much money is being spent on projects that are designed to try to enhance the standing of this government whilst our people are suffering. And I can tell you as a parliamentarian who meet with people regularly, there's a lot of suffering in this country going on right now.
The COVID-19 pandemic has been described as a battle to protect both lives and livelihoods. While Hilaire praises the CMO, he asserts the Prime Minister has been found wanting in managing the economy. Chasney recently chastised the opposition over his recent remarks that sparked a debate over the definition of the word broke and the phrase "no more money."
How do you trust somebody who has said many times the country is broke, who says openly, we have no more money, we've used all our money, and then come and say, I never said the country is broke? If you've used all your money, if you've spent all your money, if you have no more money available, then you're broke.
UWP surrogates have since accused the media of taking Chasney out of context, but Dr. Hilaire asserts that it's the Prime Minister's glib talking and freewheeling style, which is often open to interpretation, that undermines the state's efforts.
And we are not saying to you that anything is fake or hoax. There's no reason for us to say so, and we do not believe that. But we're saying to the government, you have a credibility problem right now. The Prime Minister has a credibility problem that very soon will become a legitimacy problem. That St. Lucians clearly cannot believe what he's saying and have no confidence in what he says.
The St. Lucia Labour Party has renewed calls for the Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Alan Chasney, to provide a comprehensive breakdown of the island's current fiscal position. Solange Alfred, HTS News Force.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.